Hi, and welcome to the Delivery Note podcast, brought to you by Parcel and Postal Technology International. I'm Hazel King, and in this episode, I'm joined by Martyn Lawns to talk about the challenges and opportunities in the new energy logistics market. Why is DHL so confident in this sector despite geopolitical challenges? How easy is it to pivot during times of uncertainty? And who will continue to drive the new energy sector forward? Hello and welcome to the Delivery Note podcast. I'm Hazel King, and today I'm going to be talking about the new energy logistics market. So the war between the US, Israel and Iran has obviously caused widespread supply chain issues, pushing up the cost of energy across the globe. And you might think that that is a sector that most people would be cautious about investing in. However, DHL is not one of those. In June, it announced that it would be growing its new energy logistics business from 600 million euros in 2025 to 3 billion euros by 2030 in response to a growing global demand for diversified energy sources, domestic renewable energy capacity and energy independence. That's direct from the press release. So I am joined today by Martyn Lawns, the CEO of Industrial Projects and the Senior Vice President of Growth for New Energy at DHL Group, to find out about more about the opportunities and I'm assuming some of the challenges of the growth plan. So Martyn, hello, nice to see you.
Good afternoon, Hazel, nice to see you.
So do you want to just give us just a short intro into what you do at DHL?
Sure, thanks. I joined DHL, Hazel, 14 years ago as part of the DHL Industrial Projects team. We're the division that sits within global forwarding that moves all the out of gauge and difficult to reach geographies. And I think for us, more recently, as you rightfully said in your introduction, we, as part of our 2030 strategy, embarked on really doubling down on our new energy sector. And I'll talk about that, obviously, through the call. But yeah, so I head up the new energy initiative and also the CEO of Industrial Projects since August last year.
Perfect. Excellent. So let's dive right in then. As you say, you've announced those big growth plans. So what's sort of driving the level of confidence at a time when the energy sector is facing a lot of uncertainty?
Well, I think the uncertainty is obviously on a geopolitical level, but if you look at the growth in the sector, it's really about establishing energy security. And whether you're in Europe, the Middle East, or the Americas, the drive for that energy security knows no bounds. And it's really a boom time at the minute, regardless of where that energy is sourced from, whether it's solar, wind, or indeed more the traditional sources of carbon-based energy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and obviously everyone's quite nervous around what's happened this year with the Iran conflict. The Strait of Hormuz has become, a real kind of key word, I think, and really highlighted how sort of vulnerable energy supply chains can be, especially those fossil fuels. But I'm assuming it has also had an impact on the new energy. Has that conflict and has that highlight of the supply issues had to make you rethink your strategy at all, any aspects of it?
I think, look, it's really down to how best we serve our customers. We've definitely seen, obviously, a struggle to get cargo to the impacted regions, as you rightfully said, with the strait being closed. But that's meant cargo that can be diverted. We're then sending more cargo by air freight. So the corridors into Saudi Arabia are open. We're managing I would say more deliveries through Saudi Arabia into the Gulf than obviously we were before, using that land bridge across Saudi Arabia. But I think what we're seeing is, the projects that are due to go ahead will continue to go ahead, maybe at a slower pace because of capacity and, as you say, in the Middle East, which is a growth area for us. And unfortunately, and you read in the press, the numbers that will be needed in terms of the rehabilitation, and those projects are starting to get traction in the market, as well as the growth in the Middle East. So I think as a company, we're well placed. You've obviously seen the devastation that's caused, but at the same time, from an industry perspective, we are managing to find alternative routes to access those projects.
Must be some challenges around pivoting and sort of finding air freight capacity. Have you I know that's slightly an aside to what we're talking about today, but has it been a challenge for DHL to move, and how's that worked?
Yeah, I mean, we have a balanced portfolio. Obviously, we have our own fleet of aircraft, just short of 300 aircraft that fly as part of the DHL Express fleet. We do make use of our carrier agreements with other third parties. And as we saw in COVID, you do see a reduction in the passenger capacity, and then that transfers to hopefully some additional capacity in terms of the cargo. So I think it's finding that right balance. So we have that resilience where we can use our own fleet and mobilize that, as we have done during the conflict, and repositioning aircraft to operate out of Saudi Arabia and Oman as examples, to continue to keep the cargo flowing.
So then obviously you head up the new energy part of DHL. So what does that encompass, and what sort of technologies are you most excited about in that new energy sector?
So new energy for us encompasses 8 segments. So that's wind, solar, electric vehicles, EV charging, battery energy storage, hydrogen, and sustainable fuels, as well as grid transformers. So it's quite an eclectic mix of technologies, but we see the interdependence. So for every battery storage project, there's likely a solar project at the end of it. So we see some of those segments within the new energy sector coexisting, because you need the technologies to come together. Obviously, the same with the offering to you and I in terms of the growth in the EV sector, which also ultimately puts pressure on the charging infrastructure as well as the grid. And I think, for us here in Europe, we see the replacement of aging fleet in terms of the transformer market. If you try and get a transformer today from any of the major OEMs, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year lead time. And wow. The factories are absolutely booming.
Really? Okay. And so there must be some sort of logistical challenges around delivering some of those elements as industrial sized projects. I think of my parents live in Cornwall. I think of the huge amount of wind farms that they have there and those huge blades. So can you talk around some of the challenges and how sort of you address those?
Yeah, I think it starts, Hazel, early in the process. So as part of industrial projects, we get involved very early in the planning phase, looking at the site, understanding what it takes to access the site. At a recent conference, we had the head of National Grid here in the UK, and the National Grid talked about, they've become one of the leading construction companies in the UK, and that's because of the investment. And in order to bring that to the market, you really need to be involved early. You really need to look at, these wind blades, at least onshore, are upwards of 80 meters long. The offshore blades are over 100 meters long. So you need to do that due diligence up front. And again, if you look at battery energy storage as a commodity, that's not only heavy, but it's also classified as dangerous goods. So you have to get the permitting, and the permitting has to be in advance of obviously the goods arriving. And that's one of the key areas that we're focused on, is looking at that pre-planning phase and helping the customers to solve those logistic challenges.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to transport something that's 100 meters long, though. And then obviously we've talked at the top of this about sort of the supply chain issues and the security issues. So governments are prioritizing energy security as well as decarbonisation. So has that changed any of the conversations you're having with your customers? Has it shifted the focus that they're looking at? How's that working for you?
I think it does take us to new geographies, because as we said at the top of the call, even if 5-10 years ago, who would have thought that we'd be talking about moving wind turbines into the desert? And we're doing that in a minute, and just finishing a project in Saudi Arabia, moving wind turbines. So I think looking at the different commodities, looking at the as you say, the geopolitical sphere. Governments will take a decision based on what technologies are available. And if you look at some of those renewable projects as it compares to nuclear, for example, you can actually bring some of those projects to the market faster. If you look at the permitting, it is a challenge, as you rightfully say, to erect a wind turbine. But in terms of actually delivering the power, it can be done a lot faster than some of the other projects. Same for solar. Again, if you can get access to the solar panels, relative cost of energy for a solar project compared to some other sources of power can be very much faster and at lower cost.
Absolutely. And so are there any sort of geographical areas that you expect to see strongest growth in new energy logistics over, let's say, the next 5 years?
Well, certainly in terms of production, I mean, China is still the factory to the world. So we see more and more batteries being produced out of China, feeding the rest of the network. So I think that will maintain. And not only is it, I would say from a price and quality point of view, if you look at the actual statistics that support the production, I think that will be, China will continue to feed the world with batteries. But in terms of the actual use, probably the Middle East in a whole range of energy projects, you see with the high oil price at the moment, that still supports growth in the Middle East in terms of bringing those projects to the market. So I think certainly Asia, Southeast Asia, in terms of production of the energy equipment, I think the Middle East in terms of projects, and Europe will continue, as I said, to replace aging networks as well as into the US. So I think really it's a global play, and that's really why we're excited about continuing to invest in new energy.
And that's where that sort of €3 billion figure comes from, I guess. It sounds like there's lots of opportunities for growth. Where are the biggest sort of bottlenecks that you're seeing? How's DHL overcoming those? What are your customers sort of complaining about, or what are the things that they need you to address?
I think some of those projects, particularly solar, are sensitive to price. So when you do see a spike in the ocean freight market, as we're seeing at the minute, and particularly freight out of China, that does impact the speed that some of those projects come to market. So I think that has a negative effect, but we're still seeing those projects moving forward. I think capacity is constrained at the minute into the Middle East. We are monitoring the number of ships that pass through the Hormuz on a daily basis. That has increased slightly, but it's more ships coming out that have been stuck. And I think the conditions to go back in will be very much against the consumer or the OEM in terms of making those terms quite challenging to accept. But I think also permitting has been an issue. We look at Europe where that's supposed to be one single market, and we see different approaches from country to country. We're struggling with, as I say, battery energy storage. Typically, for dangerous goods, it can be anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, in some cases longer, to get those permits. And that's just for the dangerous goods to move them by road, and then you have to get the heavy haul permit as well. So I think legislation needs to improve for us to bring some of those projects faster. But that's something we're working on as well.
I think you could probably say that across the board. Red tape always seems to be the thing that, especially in the logistics industry, I think it just is mad. And not having that consistency as well across the board. As you say, if you're delivering into Europe, you'd expect a European-wide kind of standard. Yeah. Do you see the market becoming more regional then? Governments trying to build their own domestic energy capacity, obviously to guard against when things happen outside of their control. Is it more regional, or do you still see it as a sort of fundamentally global business? Yeah,
I'm a little bit maybe not as close to that, Hazel. I think we are really working on the customer side, who obviously procurement and logistics can be further down the chain, and obviously the sales organization of those respective companies are looking at selling the end product. So I think for us, we see certainly globally that battery energy storage is a sub-segment of our strategy that is growing in double digit. We're seeing offshore wind still, I would say from a European perspective, somewhat slowed down in the US for reasons that we all know. And I think,
won't mention his name.
Probably the Middle East, again, a balanced portfolio of new energy projects and traditional projects with a high oil price supporting those, as I say, more traditional projects.
And then, I mean, it would be remiss of us not to talk about digital technologies and AI and how that's, and data, how that's changing supply chains. What impacts it having on this new energy supply chain?
Well, I think the first thing I would say from a DHL perspective, we obviously are investing in AI technologies and looking at that really to enhance the customer experience. As consumers, we all expect to know where our goods are when we've actually ordered them. In our case, our shippers expect to know where their goods are and when they're obviously reaching the final destination and in our case, the project sites. I think as well, you look at the efficiency that AI brings in terms of complex tasks, and it's fair to say, we're always looking to see where we can take value or remove non-added value work within our workforce. So those complicated tasks, particularly around obviously tariffs and customs, are areas that it makes sense for us to explore. So I think heavy focus on AI to improve the customer experience.
Yeah, it seems like it's a no-brainer to be investing with that, especially as customer demands are forever changing as well. So then let's look finally towards that 2030 target that you've set. What do you think will have surprised you most about the pace or the direction of energy transition? Do you have any sort of crystal ball ideas that you can share where you think we'll be in 4 years now?
I think we have to plan ahead. I mean, what we are seeing again is in some of the technologies is rapid change as the technology improves. I keep coming back to battery energy storage, where we saw, the first generation of units being less than 30 tons, but we're seeing those battery energy storage units rapidly increase in weight to a point where they're not able to then move on standard shipping modes. And this is where industrial projects come in, because as those units become heavier and become out of gauge and overweight, you need to find specific solutions. So I think when I look back in a few years' time, the technology shift, as we said at the top of the call, I think we'll continue to see EVs playing a bigger percentage in the car fleets in the respective countries. We'll continue to see the battery energy storage coupled with solar, and we'll continue to see, I would say, an adoption of new energy, not necessarily driven out of a love for the planet that we live in, but out of a necessity to have that balanced power supply. And I think that's when we look at the high demands, whether on the consumer side or you mentioned AI, obviously the data center need to supply power as we all want and will use AI in the future. The data centers and the growth in that sector also pull the demand through for on the infrastructure and the energy needed.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see. I guess we'll have to have you back maybe in 2030 and see whether you've made the right predictions there. So that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I will look and watch with interest at how DHL sort of really campaigns for this new energy market and moves forward. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Hazel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening today, and don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. Join us next time on the Delivery Note podcast for more insightful discussions on the parcel, postal and logistics sector.